About what happened with Iran in the Middle East and some breaking news coming just now. Joining us this evening, Vice President J.D. Vance. Mr. Vice President, thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Just seconds ago, the president went to Truth Social and typed this. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire. Complete and total ceasefire is what he typed.
Yep.
What does that mean? How did it come about? What's the development here?
Well, we were actually working on that just as I left the White House to come over here. So that's good news that the president was able to get that across the finish line. I think what it means, Brett, is quite simple. First of all, the president, without, knock on wood, having a single American casualty, obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. We are now in a place where we weren't a week ago. A week ago, Iran was very close to having a nuclear weapon. Now, Iran is incapable of building a nuclear weapon with the equipment they have because we destroyed it. So that's a very, very big thing. Now, what that means, I think, is we have to talk to Iran and, of course, to Israel about what the future holds. Because while we have obliterated the Iranian nuclear program, our hope and our expectation is that they're not going to try to rebuild that program. And I think that's what the president is really trying to figure out here, is to build a long-term settlement here to where we can have peace in the region, where our regional allies and, of course, the American people, most importantly, can be secured, but where we can ensure that the destruction of the Iranian nuclear program that has already happened is not something they try to rebuild.
I want to get to the obliterated part in just a minute, but I just want to read this fully so I get the context here. Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions for 12 hours, at which point, the ceasefire for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful on the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will. I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel, God bless Iran, God bless Iran, God bless the Middle East, God bless the United States of America, and God bless the world. He seems confident that this is all coming together.
That's right.
And when you left the White House, were you thinking this was all gelling here?
When I left the White House, I thought that we might be able to get it across the finish line before this broadcast, and it looks like the president has been able to do that. I mean, look, he's been working the phones constantly. Frankly, before the 12-day war started, but certainly over the past 12 days, the president's been extremely clear about America's national objective here. It is to create a world where Iran cannot build a nuclear weapon. We, of course, destroyed the nuclear program that they had, and the president told the entire team, we're going to work to make sure that they don't try to rebuild that nuclear capability in the future. And it's, look, this is a great thing. For Israel, think about this. They've accomplished an important military objective. They've helped us destroy the Iranian nuclear program. They've also destroyed the conventional missile capability of Iran that threatened the country of Israel. For the Iranians, I think this is a new opportunity to actually pursue the path of peace. As I said yesterday, what the Iranians have showed through their support of terror networks, through their now failed effort to build a nuclear weapon, is that they're just not very good at war. And I think the president really hit the reset button and said, look, let's actually produce long-term peace for the region. That's always been his goal. I actually think when we look back, we will say the 12-day war was an important reset moment for the entire region.
Would you be surprised if Iran is sending out signals that it doesn't have a specific ceasefire plan? How would the communication have been with the Iranians to get this level of confidence to put out that detailed statement?
Well, one of the things I've learned, Brett, about the Iranians in the past, 4 or 5 months that I've been in this job is what they say publicly and privately can sometimes be very different. I think what the Iranians have shown very clearly is they don't want this war to go on for much longer. Their air defenses have been totally destroyed. Their conventional missile program has been largely destroyed. And of course, their nuclear program has been obliterated, as I said before. So I think the Iranians are at a place where they don't want to keep on fighting. you saw the president, and I don't have the truth in front of me, but he talked about the next 6 hours finalizing the attacks. I mean, I think what he's talking about is right now, for the American people watching, it's dark over there. That's typically when the Israelis and the Iranians have been shooting at each other. I think there's some recognition that that might continue for another few hours, and tomorrow really is a new day. The end of the 12-day war, the end of the Iranian nuclear program, and I really do believe the beginning of something very big for peace in the Middle East.
So you said totally obliterated. The president has said totally obliterated the Iran nuclear program.
Yeah.
Do you know for sure where all the highly enriched uranium is?
Well, Brett, I think that's actually not the question before us. The question before us is, can Iran enrich the uranium to a weapons-grade level, and can they convert that fuel to a nuclear weapon? And we know, based on the success of our mission, of course, the leadership of the president, but the incredible skill of our military, that the two mission objectives are completely successful. We know that they cannot build a nuclear weapon. Now, you asked about the highly enriched uranium.
Yeah, like 900 pounds of it.
But what we know, Brett, is that uranium is something that exists in very large supply. Our goal was to bury the uranium, and I do think the uranium is buried, but our goal was to eliminate the enrichment and eliminate their ability to convert that enriched fuel into a nuclear weapon. I think this is an important point, Brett, because so many of the folks who have focused on the highly enriched uranium,
60%.
The main focus, Brett, has been to destroy their enrichment capacity, because we don't want that 60% uranium to become 90% uranium. That's the real concern, and that's what was so successful about our mission.
So after all this, if the Iranian government survives as is, what's to stop it from rebuilding over time if they in fact moved the 60% highly enriched uranium? You know, that's the concern.
No, the big concern, Brett, and this is again what we destroyed, is their ability to enrich uranium. If they have 60% enriched uranium, but they don't have the ability to enrich it to 90%, and further, they don't have the ability to convert that to a nuclear weapon, that is mission success. That is the obliteration of their nuclear program, which is why the president, I think, rightly is using that term. But here's the question. If Iran is desperate to build a nuclear weapon in the future, then they're going to have to deal with a very, very powerful American military again. Our hope is that the lesson that the Iranians have learned here is, look, we can fly a bunker buster bomb from Missouri to Iran completely undetected without landing once on the ground, and we can destroy whatever nuclear capacity you build up. I think that lesson is what's going to teach them not to rebuild their nuclear capacity.
Yesterday, were you speaking on the president's behalf when you said he was not interested in regime change?
Well, Brett, what I've said is the American military, that is not our mission, as regime change. Our mission was to destroy the nuclear facilities and the nuclear program of Iran, which we, of course, did. I think what the president's also said is that the Iranian people want to make a decision about regime change. That's between the Iranian people and the regime. Of course, we support freedom fighters all around the world, but our mission was to destroy the nuclear facilities, and that's what we did.
So you don't think there's any mixed message when he goes to Truth Social and says it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MIGA.
Well, I think what the president is saying very clearly, Brett, is if the Iranian people want to do something about their own leadership, that's up to the Iranian people. What the American national security interest here is very simple. It's to destroy the nuclear program. That's what we've done. And now that the 12-day war appears to be effectively over, we have an opportunity, I think, to restart a real peace process. And Brett, this is not just about two countries, Iran and Israel. All of these Gulf Arab states, they want peace. They want to invest. They want to build artificial intelligence hardware. They want to sort of come into the new economy. And that was impossible when you had Iran that was, as the president said, acting like a bully across the Middle East. We really think that if the Iranians are smart about the path forward, this could be a new dawn of an economic age of prosperity, of course, for our Gulf Arab allies, for us, for the Israelis, for everybody. But it's going to require the Iranians play it smart from here.
The president called it very weak, the Iran missile firing on the U.S. base in Qatar, Al Udeid. Was it a face-saving move? How do you get from that, firing missiles at a U.S. base, to a ceasefire, as he details in this Truth Social?
Well, as the president said, they actually gave us some warning here. And we think they gave us some warning because they didn't want to kill Americans and they didn't want to escalate. There's definitely some symbolism to this, Brett. If you look at the Iranian attack, it was 14 missiles that they telegraphed ahead of time. We dropped 14 bunker buster bombs. As the president told me earlier, our missiles, our bombs were a little bit bigger than their bombs. Our bombs actually accomplished the goal of eliminating their nuclear program. But look, we're happy, again, to restart the peace process as the president just did today.
Was the message delivered directly to the U.S. or through an emissary?
The message is always delivered through some sort of intermediary. That's been consistently true of the Iranians. Of course, we'd love to talk to them. The president's been clear about this. We'd love to have a direct conversation about how we move this thing forward because, again, we got to step back here. Why did the president do what he did over the past week? It's so that we could destroy their nuclear program. If they try to rebuild it, they're going to be on the wrong end of American power once again. We don't want that. I think they don't want that, but the ball's in their hands.
You've been reluctant or at least cautious about getting engaged previously, and that has been public. What made you sign on to this action this time?
Well, I think the president has been very clear, and I've always agreed with the president that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. And you try to run the diplomatic process as much as you possibly can. When the president decided that wasn't going to work, he took the action that he had to take. Now we're in a new phase. That action was successful. We had a wildly successful military operation to take out their nuclear program. Now let's go on to the next phase. And I think the president, look, sometimes he's willing to use peace. Sometimes he's willing to use the military. I think it really depends on what the Iranians do from here.
And what do you think they do from here?
Well, it's an open question, Brett. I don't want to predict what the other side will do, but I think that I know what we'll do if they continue to pursue a nuclear weapon. And I hope they don't choose that path because I know the president wants to see the Middle East become peaceful and prosperous in the future. That's not going to happen if Iran pursues a nuclear weapon again.
And for the people, so we talked about the people who believe that this is going towards World War III, especially in your own party. There's a section that's very vocal. There's another section that says you should take out this regime because it's evil and horrible and has done horrible things for decades. How do you square those two sides? And can this regime stay in place and still have a peaceful, reaction relationship with the U.S.?
Well, I think the president has squared those two sides quite well. One, because he's the leader of the movement, and a lot of people trust the president as they should. They recognize they're not seeing the same intelligence. They're not seeing the same classified documents. They trust the president to do a good job. But importantly, Brett, I think he's threaded the needle quite well here. We had a very particular objective. It was profound and difficult to accomplish.
Do you think
the elimination of the Iranian nuclear program.
Do you think they were close?
And I think the president successfully did that. You're asking, were the Iranians close to a nuclear weapon? Brett, they were very close to a nuclear weapon. And what I encourage my fellow Americans to think about here is that a week ago, the Iranians were quite close to achieving a nuclear weapon. Now they cannot build a nuclear weapon. That is the biggest testament to the president's leadership and to the success of our mission. In 1 week, without, thank God so far, not losing a single American casualty, we have taken what was a threatening nuclear program that could have destabilized the entire world. Now that program is gone. We did it through effective presidential leadership and also some very, very competent work from our troops.
How often does it happen where you're going to do an interview and you get a Truth Social seconds before? You have some sense of it, but it's pretty detailed, where you are being asked about something the president has just put out.
In this administration, Brett, it happens quite a bit, actually, but we knew this was coming. The draft, it was interesting. I just read the draft about 2 minutes before we went on the air. It was a little bit different from what the president had showed me a couple of hours ago. But again, I knew that he was working the phones as I was on the way over here. So I knew exactly what we were going to do. And look, I love that about this presidency and this administration is he's always working. He doesn't say, the vice president's going to do an interview, so I'm going to stop doing anything. He says, we're going to do the American people's business. The vice president knows what I'm trying to accomplish. And if I get it done, great, because we're going to talk about it and celebrate it, because it is a thing to celebrate. I can't emphasize this enough, Brett. We have destroyed the Iranian nuclear program. 0 Americans have died. That's an amazing, amazing thing. Americans, whether Democrats or Republicans, we should be celebrating that.
Mr. Vice President, we appreciate you coming and rolling with the punches as well.
Of course.
Thank you for the time.
Thanks, Brett.